Well, welcome back to Mr. Obsolete's Vintage Homesteading. Today we need to cut up our kindling here. We're going to be talking about use what you have. So these are branches that we took off trees that we took down, and we're going to be using our little mini Mac here. I wanted to talk briefly about that and why I use old equipment. You can see I paid 10 bucks for it. This is over 20 years ago. And I bought it at a garage sale, and when I picked it up and looked at it, I thought, gee, there must be something really wrong with it for so little money. So I set it back down, started to walk off, and the guy comes over and says, well, you ought to buy that. He said it runs, and he started it right up for me, but he said it runs inconsistently. So I bought it and been using it for all these years. And these have little inconsistencies that you have to deal with. They're like me, they don't like hot weather. And the thing that I've found, well, I can use them, a lot of others can't. If you don't have the mechanical ability and stuff, you won't understand the problems these have. So one main thing that affects them worse than anything is air temperature. Second is air density. And third is the type of fuel and how much fuel is in the gas tank. It took me a while to figure it out, but anytime you use them in the warm weather, you always have to adjust the carburetors and fiddle around with them. And on a real hot day, they'll overheat and vapor lock, and the carburetor can't pump the fuel, so you have to let it cool down to start it and run it. So it taught me that the best time to use them is when it's cool, like today. So anyway, the only things I've really done to this saw is that the recoil starter here, I had to replace it with a used one because the former owner had abused it so bad it failed. It's the only recoil I've ever had on a McCulloch that failed. And you can see that it's a really nice, clean little saw. And I took the original chain off it, which was designed for an anti-kickback, and they don't cut for beans. So I put a pretty aggressive chain on it, and it cuts really good now. So the other thing you've seen in a lot of our videos where I'm using a sawbuck and my smart holder and things like that, well, for using this out in the woods, I usually have a stump where I will set my kindling on it and cut it off, use it as a holder, but I don't have that here. So I decided to build one. So I built this fairly heavy. I want it to be stable. And if you want to see how these are built, you can go back to one of my older videos, but you can see that the height here, I have it fairly narrow. And the reason for that is the wood is small. And so I can hold it here and I can cut out here, which is nice because now I'm away from the saw and I can just cut it and go through it. The last cut here, I made it so that the length of wood is the perfect length for my fireplace and stove. But anyway, you can see how it's built there and reasons why. So anyway, we'll get cutting here in a bit and we'll be back. Well, we're back. I'm going to briefly talk about using what you have. So I've got the sawbuck set up here where I can start cutting here shortly. I want to talk about this little table I have here, a little portable table. We bought 3 of these at a junk store for 10 bucks. We use them for different things. But when I'm cutting out here and I'm picking up a piece of wood, I don't like setting the saw on the ground, so I put a surround on here. I can set the saw on here when I'm not using it, and then if I need to use it as a table, and there's just 2 screws and I can take the surround off. But anyway, so I can just like that, put my piece of wood in here, pick this off and start cutting. So Let's get cutting. Well, you can see how quick and efficient that is. Got it here. I can run over to the shed there and dump it in there, and we're all set. So for the second half, I'm going to talk about being thrifty. In layman's terms, cheap. How to get your money's worth. So I'll be back in a sec. Well, we're going to talk briefly about how I became thrifty. As I went through my working career and stuff, working on machinery and different things, you can see that every year they cheapen stuff up and didn't make stuff as good. So saws are a good example. The older ones like this are a lot better than the new ones. But they were finicky, so this saw cost about $70, and the guy that had it didn't know how to adjust it or do anything with it, so he would have to take it to a shop if it wasn't running properly, and at that time the labor rate was about $25 an hour. And so if they put a carb kit in and a few things, they have $30, $35. Well, 2 trips to the shop and you got a brand new saw. So they just get thrown in the corner, sitting for years, and then I find them. So that's why I fix up old stuff. Like I say, it's better than the new. And here's a little quick story. One time I needed a forklift. And I don't need one very often, but the guy called and told me he knew where one was at that had a bad engine in it, so I went and looked at it. The guy had just spent $6,000 on this thing. Had a new clutch, new brakes, new seals on everything. It was just full tune-up, new distributor. And he said the engine was bad in it, so I bought it for $300. But just when I went to pick it up, he says, "Oh, it runs." He brought it out and had a dead miss in the engine. I looked at the engine, had a little 4-cylinder Continental engine in it. It's one like I had off an air compressor that had failed, and so I had a good engine for it. But anyway, I brought it home and started checking it out. Well, it didn't have any spark on one cylinder, so that plug wasn't firing. I checked the wire, it was good, everything checked out good, but the brand new distributor cap on that thing was faulty, and that was the only thing wrong with it. And on the way home, I had to stop at the wrecking yard because the guy wouldn't give me the propane tank with the forklift, so I stopped, and buddy was running a wrecking yard and he had a propane tank, and their forklift had just blown up and the tank had just been filled, so he gave it to me. So I brought the thing home, got it running really good, and they're again using it, but like I say, occasional use. So something like that would have cost $30,000, $40,000. I got it for $300 and spent about $50 on it, and that was really a good deal. And I told the guy about it, and he went crazy because he had just bought a new same brand forklift. It was rated for 6,000 pounds lift, like the old one. The old one would lift anything. It would actually lift so much that the back wheels had come off the ground. Well, the new one he bought would lift 6,000 pounds on 1 ounce and had an automatic shut off or an overload. So you'd have to let it sit and you'd have to recalibrate it to start it up. He was really mad because it just didn't do the job. And another buddy of mine was a forklift mechanic, and he was talking about how crappy the new forklifts were. Said the old ones, you know, occasionally they'd flip them over on their side and they'd flip them back up and check the fluid levels and do maybe a minor repair on a roll cage or something, put them right back into action. Well, the new ones, when they flipped over, they'd bend the frames and they had to scrap them. So that's why I like old stuff. And I'll be doing a video on tools here before long and show you how that, you know, the top lines and stuff slowly over time became cheaper and poorer metal and stuff like that. So that's why so many of our major companies that failed, paying for a big price for a name, and the product isn't that good. So anyway, I got to get busy and get cutting. So remember, vintage is always better, and here's the reasons why. See you soon.